Hello and welcome to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of communication and critical thinking, and how these essential skills can transform our relationships and our futures with our teens. I'm your host, Francesca Hudson, the classic high school teacher, a writer, entrepreneur, and an advocate for meaningful conversations. Each episode, I explore strategies and share insights on how parents can enhance their communication with their children. It's not just about talking, it's about listening, understanding, and fostering an environment where critical thinking thrives. I'm here to equip you with the tools not only for immediate improvements in your family interactions, but also to set up our teens for long-term success in every aspect of their lives. So whether you're on your morning commute or winding down for the evening, join me as we unlock the potential of our conversations to shape a brighter, more thoughtful world. Let's get started. Hello friends, welcome back to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I am your host, Francesca Hudson, and I am thrilled to have you join me here today. We are wrapping up our 5-part series on artificial intelligence and its impact on our young people. So for the last 4 episodes, I have been going into all the different ways that AI or artificial intelligence has impacting our teens' study at school, or the potential ways that it could impact our teens' study at school, and how as parents and as educators and as adults, how can we prepare for that, and how do we respond to that when we see our teenagers using AI? So we have gone through the whole spectrum over the last 4 episodes, and today I really wanted to spend this 5th episode on what critical thinking is and how it is our teens' secret weapon in this digital age of AI, and also how we can apply critical thinking skills so that we don't have to be intimidated by what's on the horizon and by the technology that our teens are using. So in our previous episodes, we have covered everything from the basics of AI, artificial intelligence, its role in education, the social media influences that it has, and privacy concerns. So if you missed any episodes, be sure to catch up on our platform. So today we are going to be looking at some practical strategies. We want to encourage the importance of staying curious. And in our teenagers' world, curiosity comes in many shapes and forms, not all that we understand sometimes. But I have got some tips and some strategies today to share with you that you can pass on to your teen or get them to listen to this podcast about ways that they can begin to sort of sift through some of that information that's coming their way. I think you'll find that these tools that we're going to go through today really valuable to navigate through an AI-driven world. First up, I wanted to talk about strategies and tools for developing critical thinking. And here at the Classic High School Teacher, that is what we are all about. We are all about communication and critical thinking. Those two go hand in hand. And we need to break it down to a really, really simple level for our young people and start to develop those skills at a really early age. Because I think that with the emergence of AI and the amount of digital information that is just unverified, and there's no context to information that people put up online, there's no filtering, there's no quality assurance. So we need to make sure that our teens and our young people are able to begin to develop those skills for themselves to determine what's relevant and what's not, and what's factual and what's not. What is critical thinking first and foremost? Critical thinking involves actively analysing, synthesising and evaluating information gathered from either what you can see, observations, or your experiences, present experiences, past experiences, how you reflect on things, or how you reason, your logic, how you justify things, or how you communicate. And it's about being skeptical and questioning rather than passively accepting information. But rather than being skeptical and closed-minded, it's about being open and making sure that you have looked at a situation from not just your own limited viewpoint, but perhaps other contexts and other opinions that might have impact on the situation that you're looking at yourself. AI shapes much of the digital content that we consume. So pretty much everything that you look at online has had some kind of influence with artificial intelligence. So whether it's social media that you're following, and there's pages on social media, they will have, well, social media itself has algorithms, which is artificial intelligence, working out, predicting what you're into, what sort of topics you would be interested in viewing on social media, and then putting that in front of you. Or businesses will use artificial intelligence for their own script writing or marketing. It's everywhere in a digital context. So our ability to think and look at something and question it and think, is this the truth or is this what somebody wants me to believe, becomes really crucial. So you can see where I'm going with this with teenagers, because you can see how vulnerable our teenagers are to being told information and then just accepting it at face value. And the critical thinking teaches them to stop looking and taking things at face value and think maybe there might be something more underneath a piece of information than what they're just being told. And this can apply even socially when they're told something at school by their friends about somebody else, rather than just simply accepting it. They need to be able to think for themselves and form judgments on that, and maybe even start to question some of the information that they're being given, and having the confidence to start questioning the information that they're given. So critical thinking skills, even at its most basic level, enables teenagers to discern bias and recognize when they're being manipulated. And it also helps them to make informed decisions in a landscape where data and AI-driven suggestions can often mislead or oversimplify quite complex at times issues. Let's look at an example. So a common one at the moment on social media that's floating around is AI, artificial intelligence, will take over all our jobs. In 20 years' time, or even less if you listen to some of the scientists and experts, AI will have completely eradicated the human workforce and we will all be unemployed. Do we accept that at face value? Or do we look at it and think, let's break down this argument a little further? So there's two premises to this argument, or this common claim. The first one is that AI technologies are advancing rapidly. Well, yes, they are. And there's plenty of research and there's plenty of articles that you can look up to see how a lot of the world's greatest minds are very worried about the advancement of AI and how quickly it is advancing in our society. The other premise is that many jobs currently require tasks that AI can perform. Well, this is true too, that there will be a whole lot of jobs that will be affected by AI, just like when we had the Industrial Revolution last century or in the 1800s, that a lot of jobs became redundant then because technology industry really took over what was essentially human manual tasks. We're in that next wave of an industrial revolution, but instead of it being the machine in factories, it's the computer. We've got these two premises here, that AI technologies are advancing rapidly and many jobs currently require tasks that AI can perform. These are both true. But then we jump to this massive conclusion that AI will eventually replace all human jobs. And that is a massive assumption. So we need to look at that and how do we make the jump from, yes, this potentially could happen, we've got two potential situations happening, to suddenly AI is going to take over all human jobs. We need to look at the premises and we need to decide whether or not they logically support this assumption, this conclusion. I call oversimplification of complex issues that you see on social media, I call them assumptions rather than conclusions. But we need to encourage questioning on the inevitability implied by this conclusion. AI will eventually replace all human jobs. Is that true? Or are we just assuming that? So what sort of questions, or how do we break that down? How do we start to look at this massive assumption and decide whether or not it actually is valid? We need to separate arguments, assumptions into premises and conclusions like we've just looked at. And then we need to examine whether the premises logically support the conclusion. Okay, so here are some ways that we can teach our teenagers. I'll put a link to this information on the podcast page so that you can download it and go through it with your teenager at home if you want to explore this idea further. But the first step is to read and understand the argument. Read the argument carefully if you see it online, trying to understand the overall point. What is the author's point that they're trying to make? Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is jump straight to the conclusion, or I call it an assumption if it's on social media. And you can often find what the conclusion is because there'll be words like therefore, or hence, or thus, which often precede the conclusion. And then step 3 is find the premises. So look for the pieces of evidence, look for the reasons that the social media post is pointing you in the direction of this assumption. So look for phrases like because or since, which typically introduce premises. And then step 4 is outline the argument. So draw a simple map or list out the premises leading to the conclusion. Okay, so let's look at it again. AI will take over all our jobs. That is the social media post. If we look at the conclusion or the assumption, AI will eventually replace all human jobs. That is the assumption. That is what is said on this common claim on social media. How do we know that this is true? Well, it's not, because it's assuming that AI will eventually replace all human jobs. But we've got no proof. There's no proof in the social media claim to say by the year 2030, all jobs will be replaced by AI. We just don't know. It's making a guess about something that might or might not happen in the future. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm not saying one way or the other about AI. That's a whole different topic. But to be able to say AI will take over all our jobs, that is a huge claim. And there just isn't any proof. We haven't seen any proof to support that claim. So we need to make sure that, yes, AI technologies are advancing rapidly, and yes, many jobs currently require tasks that AI can perform, but then to make that jump to the statement AI will eventually replace all human jobs, well, that's just too big a jump. There is no proof within those two premises that AI will replace all human jobs. It will replace probably quite a lot if we follow the premises in this statement. But there's nothing in these premises that says AI will replace all human jobs. What I am leading towards is that when you are looking at a statement on social media, or when your young person is looking at a statement on social media and they're repeating it back to you, ask them to stop and reread the statement and look for the separate arguments within that statement. And we call them premises. In other words, they're supporting reasons that the person's making the statement. So look for the supporting reasons in the statement and then find the conclusion that the statement is trying to lead you towards, the assumption that it wants you to believe, right? You've got supporting reasons and then you've got the assumption or the conclusion. Look for that in the statement with your teenager and then encourage your young person to examine whether or not those supporting reasons, those premises, logically support the conclusion or the assumption, and check for anything within that statement that just doesn't logically make sense. And we call that logical fallacies in critical thinking. So I'll say that again. So the way to look at a statement online that your teen is repeating back to you and you are trying to teach them, maybe you need to look at that again. Are you sure? Where did you get your information from? Look at the statement with them and look for the supporting reasons within the statement and the assumption. So I always start with what assumption is the statement making and then work backwards from there and find the supporting reasons that the person's trying to come up with to support their conclusion to support their assumption. So look at it like that with your teen, and then talk to your teenager about whether or not those supporting reasons, those premises, if they logically support the conclusion or if there is something logically not quite right. Another way you can look at information online is evaluating the evidence. I'll give you another scenario. When researching the impact of AI on privacy, a teenager comes across a blog post claiming AI invades our privacy more than humans do. All right, so straight away, my brain is thinking, who's written this post? What's their incentive? What you need to do, or what your teenager needs to do, is to look at how credible the source is. Is it a tech expert that's saying this, or is it just an anonymous blog? Okay, so that's the first knee-jerk reaction that your teenager needs to learn to do, is like, who is giving me this piece of information? What is their incentive? And a great way to do this is, it's called, now excuse my language, it's called the CRAAP test, CRAAP. The way you can go through this is the currency. How recent is the information? How current is the information? That's C for currency. R is for relevance. Does the information meet the needs of your research? A is for authority. Who is the author or the publisher or the source, and are they reputable? And then another A is for accuracy. Is the information supported by evidence, and is it consistent with other sources that you've read online that are credible? And then finally, P is for purpose. Why was this information published in the first place? Was it to inform? Was it to persuade? Was it to entertain? Or was it to sell? And this is where teens especially can get manipulated. So we need to be looking at that P, purpose. So that's the CRAAP test, CRAAP, currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. And I will put this on the podcast page for you to download so that you can print it off and show it to your teenager. It's really good for research papers and assignments. And also if they are writing a piece in English, we used to teach this about how to argue, how to write an argument, a written argument. And this is also great for history, for social studies, any humanities topic really. Use the CRAAP test. I think they'll really enjoy that title too. They've gone through the test to examine the information, to assess whether or not it's credible, and to make sure that they know what the purpose of the information is that they're reading. The next part that I think our teens need to develop, and this can be at a very basic level, is the ability to stay curious. And by staying curious, our teens will embrace lifelong techniques to keep an open mind. The value of curiosity is a huge driver in developing thinking in our young people, in our teenagers. It motivates us to seek new information, to ask questions, and to challenge existing assumptions. Think about in the context of AI, where technology evolves rapidly. If we maintain curiosity and if we teach our young people to continue to be curious, it will lead us to a deeper understanding of how AI works, so we can begin to take the fear away, and its implications on society, for better or for worse. Curious minds are better equipped to recognize the opportunities for innovation by keeping an open mind, by staying curious and looking at what is coming up on the forefront of technology. How is it going to shape our society? How is it going to impact our interactions with each other? People that are curious will recognize the opportunities for innovation and will be able to anticipate any ethical implications of new technologies too. So staying curious isn't just about looking for the latest idea that you can make a lot of money from or you can help a lot of people from. It's about ethics as well, and ensuring that whatever technology is coming up, it's going to impact and help humanity in a good way, in a positive way. And if not, what are the implications? How do we counteract that? So by encouraging our teenagers to see curiosity as the foundation of innovation, we will be teaching them how to question, because curious individuals who question how and why AI systems make decisions are often the ones who drive the improvements in these technologies and develop novel applications that benefit society. And isn't that what we want for our teenagers? Don't we want them to rise up through the ranks and contribute in the best way that they can to society in whatever shape or form that is, whether that's sports or music or arts, or even just being able to contribute within a group? We all have a role to play, and our teenagers coming through are no different. I'd like you to consider the story of Jane, a librarian who witnessed the transformation of information management from physical card catalogues to digital databases to AI-powered search systems. It's been a huge evolution in the library system. And Jane's curiosity about each new technology led her to learn coding in her 50s, right? And coding is a word that a lot of us think is relegated to the world of tech, but our children at school, and I have got kids that are at primary school level, are learning coding. Like at age 5 upwards, they are learning coding. And so coding, the word itself doesn't have to be this high-tech computer hacker level. It's the ability for any of us to pick up a new technology and create something out of it. So Jane's curiosity about each new technology that had happened during her journey in the library, so from physical card catalogues to digital databases to AI power systems, that curiosity led her to learning about coding in her 50s, allowing her to create better search tools for her library. Her story highlights that with curiosity, learning never stops, and age is not a barrier to adapting to technological challenges. How do we foster a learning environment like that at home? Well, to start with, encourage questions. Make it a habit to have discussions at home where every family member can ask questions or express curiosity about how things work, including technology. Pick a time of day to do it. Maybe it's breakfast time as everybody's rushing out the door and you've got 10 minutes. It's your only time during the day that everybody sits still and eats. Or maybe it's dinner time if you are lucky enough to be organised where everybody can sit down together over the dinner table and eat together. Or it could just be in the car on the way to sports drop-off or practice or school drop-off. Find a time and make that your question asking time. And questions can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about critical thinking or technology or AI. Just anything in life, anything that is topical in your family, ask open-ended questions. And open-ended are the types of questions that the other person can't say yes or no to. They have to actually use words. So rather than saying, do you think you're going to work hard today at school? And they can either say yes or no. You would say, what subject do you think you need to make the most improvement with today at school and why? And then they would have to elaborate on that chosen subject. So question time is really important. Another thing is explore together as a family. Occasionally choosing a technology at home or an AI concept and explore it together as a family. And when I say AI concept, it could just even be a new app that's available on Apple or on iTunes, or it could be like the latest iPhone coming out or smartphone coming out. Choose something technological and explore it together as a family. Read the reviews, look at what's been said about it online, make it a real family discussion about what upgrade you're going to make if you're looking at upgrading a piece of technology at home. Or just simply experiment with some of the AI tools available for personal use. I mean, there's so many different chatbots, ChatGPT, those sorts of things that can assist you with a whole range of different tasks at home. There's so much that you can use AI for that you can find on the net. And then the other way that you can foster a learning environment at home is creating a learning zone. So designate a space at home that's filled with resources like books or magazines or a computer, and you can encourage your young people, your teenagers, to use the space to explore their interests, particularly those related to science and technology, or STEM. Science, technology, engineering, or maths is a hugely popular trend with parents at the moment, looking at what sort of STEM activities children and young people can do. There is, for my children, we've got a monthly craft box that comes from KiwiBox. Now, I'm not an affiliate to KiwiBox, but I have been using it since we had the lockdowns and we were stuck at home and I needed something to keep them busy. And that's where I discovered it when they were young. But they absolutely adore these boxes when they come every month. And they are designed to encourage technology and learning about science, but doing it in a very, very approachable, hands-on way. And so I would encourage you to have somewhere at home where you can have something like this set up. And for younger kids, for families with younger kids, it could be a craft room or a craft area. As I say, we have these Kiwi boxes and there is a bit of craft involved with that, assembling and making. But STEM toys are also things like those magnet blocks. They click together and you can build towers and castles and things like that. So that's for younger people. And then for older people, have it more like a computer room that's filled with books or magazines or something really comfy, some comfy cushions or bean bags. Just a place to encourage quiet learning and quiet curiosity. Curiosity is the key word here. So my call to action for teenagers, we've talked about encouraging curiosity and we've talked about what is critical thinking at a really basic, logical level. And so now my call to action for teenagers is to take charge of their learning. And that starts with motivation. Teenagers' education isn't just about absorbing information given in school. It's about engaging actively with this information, questioning it and applying it in various contexts. To actively engage, it helps develop a deeper understanding and a personal connection to their learning material. Learning through experience is the best way to learn. When I was a teenager, I organised my high school formal after party. Funny story here. I'm sidetracking a little bit, but our school put on the formal, or the prom in America, they call it. You guys would call it. But they were not going to be affiliated or in charge of any after parties. So I did that role and organised our school's after party. And it was a Catholic girls' school, very small Catholic girls' school. There was about 30 of us in the entire year group. And so we're not talking like a massively out of control, wild party. It was very ladylike. But the after party venue obviously had a surcharge fee. So I created tickets. We sold tickets to everybody that wanted to come. And obviously they brought partners and we had a great night. But that was my first foray into entrepreneurship because we found the problem, obviously, that needed to be solved was that we had no after party. And I wanted to step into that void and provide a solution, which was the after party that we put on. And luckily I had a dad who was a graphic designer, so he designed the tickets and we printed them all out and it looked really professional. And I decorated the venue with my friends and we almost made it feel like I had a brand to it, right back when I was 17, 18, learning about branding. But there was a small profit made from that. And it was my first foray into creating something, selling it, and getting a return on that. Now, obviously, at that age, we'd break even, but really fostered in me a hunger for entrepreneurship and creating something to provide solutions to problems that people have. And that is an example of experiential learning that teenagers, I think, really thrive with. When they can see the relevance of what they're doing and how it applies in the real world, then they will rise to the challenge. So encourage active participation in learning. I would encourage teenagers to view knowledge as a tool for empowerment. Understanding complex subjects, including AI, equips teenagers with the power to make informed decisions and influence the world around them, right? So if we as parents and as educators and as caregivers encourage them to take initiative by researching topics that they're interested in, or starting projects that they're interested in, or participating in clubs or workshops where they can apply their knowledge, then once again, it's that real world application of making it relevant to what they're learning about. And that keeps the motivation up. So then they're developing these critical thinking skills. And now we need to encourage our young people to apply it in an AI-driven world. With social media algorithms, for example, we know that the algorithm will just show a user what they're interested in or what the algorithm thinks that they're interested in. It doesn't necessarily give them a wide open perspective of what other pieces of information are out there on the web. Our teenagers need to use critical thinking. We need to ask our teenagers to consider why certain posts are promoted on their feed and why others aren't. And what is the impact of this? What might it have on their perceptions and therefore their behaviour? So we want to challenge them to think about how they might use social media differently if they understood these mechanisms better. And the other way online is with online privacy. Think about online privacy in the age of AI and how personal data is collected and used online. For example, personalized advertising, if you click on a link and sign up to something, then AI collects your data. They collect your name or your birth date or your email address, and then they know that you're interested in that topic. We need to be teaching our teenagers to really critically evaluate what information they share online themselves and also consider the potential long-term impacts of data sharing when they give away their important data to online forums or online pages or online shops. And so then this leads us to decision making, right? The importance of using critical thinking to make decisions, especially when it's using AI in their own lives, becomes really important as well. For example, they're deciding to download a new app on their phone. We need to encourage them to really think about the permissions the app is asking for and why it needs those permissions, and think about the benefits that the teens are getting by downloading this app against potential privacy concerns, especially, you think about those apps, like the photo apps where they can manipulate pictures of themselves, or the filters they can put on selfies, or all of those sorts of apps online. There's so many that can potentially start to tap into your personal data. We need teens to start to question that before they download. They don't just blindly download the latest and greatest. My challenge to us as parents and educators is to work with our young people to set specific, achievable goals that promote ethical thinking on a very generalised basis to get the ball rolling. So examples could be reading a new book each month on a topic that challenges them. Or it could be exploring a new subject through online courses or workshops, especially subjects like coding or statistics or ethical studies that directly complement understanding of AI, if AI is something that you are particularly worried about as a parent. But it could just be a new subject in general, just to spark curiosity in our young people. Or it could be discussing current events critically with friends or family. This could be structured as a monthly discussion club where they pick a topic, they can research different viewpoints and come together to discuss those viewpoints critically. But you would need to use evidence and reasoned arguments, and it should be about finding current events that are outside of your comfort zone rather than in your already developed algorithm, because remember, the algorithm is only going to bring up more of what you like to read or more of what you believe in. So finding current events and then discussing it critically needs to be outside of your comfort zone. That's the whole point in beginning to foster those critical thinking skills. And just remember that the goal isn't just to achieve these objectives, but it's to make a habit of thinking critically around our world. I encourage us as parents and educators to support these goals by providing resources that our kids need. Like, as I say, it doesn't have to be the Kiwi box example that I gave before, but providing other resources that they might need access to, even if it's just a computer at home, magazines, or discussing ideas, or perhaps even just joining in on those monthly challenges that I mentioned above. So by encouraging our teens and our young people to take these active steps, and by developing their critical thinking skills and by setting regular goals, they can become more informed, thoughtful, and empowered individuals ready to face the challenges of an AI-driven world. And isn't that what we want? Don't we want the best for our kids? Don't we want them to be ready when they leave school and head out into the wide open world to be able to face these challenges head on? We've covered a lot today and in the last 4 episodes, or 5 episodes if you count today's one, about AI and its impact on critical thinking in our teenagers. We've gone through the introduction to AI. We've talked about AI in education and social media and privacy concerns and how we can enhance our critical thinking skills. We have got so many more topics that I can't wait to dive into with our wonderful parent audience. If you have any questions about today's episode, please drop me a line at info@theclassichighschoolteacher.com. And in the meantime, I encourage everyone to keep the conversations going at home. Discuss what you've learned with your children, with your friends, your family, your peers. Experiment with the tools and strategies we've used and see how they can change your interaction with technology. I will put on the podcast page a link to that CRAAP test, that CRAAP. Sorry, it sounds very crass saying that. That test that teens can really get a lot out of when they are writing research reports at school. So I'll put that link on the podcast page. And remember, when you challenge your mind, you can change the world. This is Francesca Hudson signing off. Stay curious, my friends, and keep thinking critically. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I hope you found our discussion enriching and that you're walking away with new ideas to enhance communication and critical thinking within your own family. If you enjoyed this episode and are finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to rate us on your favourite podcast platform. Your feedback not only supports us, but also helps other parents discover the tools they need to foster stronger relationships and critical thinking skills with their teens. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who you think could benefit from our today's topic. I'm Francesca Hudson, and I look forward to joining you again next time as we continue to challenge our minds and change the world. Until then, keep thinking critically and communicating effectively.